My name is Lily, and I am 27 years old. This is the story of how I loved a man named William, a man who changed everything in my life. At first, everything was beautiful, but life, as always, had its own plans. I met William on a rainy afternoon in a small cafe tucked away from the noise of the city. I was there for a job interview that had just been canceled last minute. He was sitting at the corner table, reading a book. Something about him, his calmness, the way he held his coffee, the way he smiled at strangers, pulled me in. When our eyes met, it felt like something shifted inside me. And when he asked, "Do you want to share this table?" I said yes, not knowing that single word would be the start of something unforgettable. We talked for hours. About everything. Books, childhood dreams, favorite songs, fears. I felt like I'd known him for years. He was a software engineer, quiet but deeply thoughtful. I told him I was an aspiring writer struggling to find my place. He listened. Not just politely, but like he truly cared. We began meeting often. Coffee turned into dinners. Walks under the stars turned into deep conversations. He once told me, "You make silence feel safe, Lily." I didn't know how much those words would mean later. 6 months into knowing each other, William asked me to be his girlfriend. I was hesitant, not because I didn't love him, but because I feared heartbreak. I had been hurt before, but something about William made me believe again. So I said yes. Our love was simple, not the dramatic kind for movies, but the soft, consistent kind that feels like home. We built a world together, slowly, carefully, like two people afraid to break the magic. But love alone, I learned, is never enough. One evening, William seemed distant. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I asked what was wrong, but he said, "Nothing, just tired." I believed him, until the tiredness turned into silence, and the silence into absence. He started pulling away, canceling plans, ignoring messages. I felt the distance, like a growing wall between us. I blamed myself, wondering if I was too much or not enough. Then one night, after days of not hearing from him, I went to his apartment. The door was unlocked. I walked in and found him sitting on the couch, eyes red from crying. He looked up and said, "Lily, I'm sick." Time froze. He told me he had been diagnosed with a rare neurological disorder. It was progressive, incurable. He had known for a few weeks but couldn't bring himself to tell me. He didn't want me to see him slowly fade. Didn't want to be a burden. I cried. Not because he was sick, but because he had been carrying it alone. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "Because I love you," he whispered. "And I want you to remember me when I was strong, when I was yours, not when I become someone else." I held him that night like I never had before. Not because I was afraid to lose him, but because I realized I already had. After that night, nothing was the same. William tried to act normal, to laugh at my silly jokes and hold my hand like he used to. But behind his eyes, I could see the storm, silent, heavy, and painful. He was getting weaker. His hands sometimes shook when he tried to hold his coffee cup. He'd forget small things. My favorite flower, the movie we watched last week. He hid it well, always smiling, always saying I'm fine. But I knew he wasn't. I wanted to stay, to be the one who cared for him, loved him until the end. But he kept pushing me away. "Lily," he said one morning, "you deserve a life full of sunshine, not a life spent watching someone fade into shadows." I knelt beside him, tears in my eyes. "You are my sunshine, William. Even now." He smiled, God, that smile, and said, "Then let me keep it that way. Don't watch me disappear." I refused to leave. I stayed through the trembling nights, through hospital visits and memory lapses. I wrote every moment down. His words, his thoughts, his dreams. I wanted to capture him before he slipped away completely. Some days, he was himself again. He'd hold me tight and whisper, "You're my favorite story." Other days, he'd forget who I was, staring at me like a stranger in his home. These broke me. I remember one night in particular. It was raining just like the day we met. He sat by the window, lost in thought. I sat beside him and placed my head on his shoulder. He whispered, "Do I know you?" My heart cracked, but I nodded and smiled.
"I'm Lily.
"I'm your love story." He turned to look at me, eyes wide with surprise. "Lily? That name feels warm." I cried silently, holding his hand. Weeks passed. He stopped recognizing people. Words became harder for him. Then walking. Then speaking. I sat by his bedside every day. I read him our favorite poems, sang the songs we used to hum during long drives, and told him about our first kiss, our first fight, our first dance. I hoped that somehow my words could reach the part of him still holding on. The day he stopped breathing was quiet, peaceful. He looked calm, almost like he was sleeping. I held his hand until it turned cold, whispering one last time, "Goodbye, my love." I stayed in the room long after the doctors left. The rain tapped gently on the window, just like that first day. It felt like the world was crying with me. Months passed and life moved on, at least for the world. For me, time stood still. I visited our cafe, sat in our favorite corner, and stared at the chair where he once read his books. I wrote about him, page after page. I turned our love into a novel. I titled it Goodby, My Love. I wanted the world to know about William, about a man who taught me that real love is soft, deep, and sometimes full of pain. One afternoon, I found a letter in the drawer of his old desk. It was written in shaky handwriting, but I knew it was his. "My dearest Lily, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer by your side. But I hope you're still smiling. I want to thank you for staying, for loving me, for making me feel like I was worth something even when I wasn't sure of myself. I'm sorry for the pain I've caused you.
But I need you to promise me something. Live.
Don't stop loving. Don't stop dreaming. You are light, Lily. You brought light into my darkest days. Let that light shine for someone else, someday. I will always love you. Forever. William." I held that letter to my heart and cried like I hadn't cried before. But those words, they gave me peace. They helped me breathe again. I found myself telling this story to a room full of strangers at a small book event. I read from our book, and when I finished, a woman stood up with tears in her eyes and said, "You made me believe in love again." That's what William would have wanted. To this day, I still sit by the window when it rains. I close my eyes and I see him, young, smiling, coffee in hand, asking, "Do you want to share this table?" And I whisper back, "Always." I hope you enjoyed this story. Have you ever experienced? Share your stories with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories and adventures. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.